Hello, Tom.
So, London Garden Bridge. Here we are sitting more or less looking at its proposed location. What do you think of it?
It's in the wrong place. Shouldn't be there. The present views are fantastic. It's a sublime view of St Paul's Cathedral, which has been there for the last 400 years and should be kept.
It's true, but the very best view is from Waterloo Bridge. And actually, as you walk over the Garden Bridge, you should get a comparable view without the traffic nuisance which you have on Waterloo Bridge.
It won't be a comparable view because it won't share the sweep of the river, which is what's so sublime about it. In the present view, what you have is a curve of the embankment running round. The Garden Bridge is proposed in the middle of that curve, and so you won't have the extent or the panorama which currently extends from Waterloo.
I don't think it's the middle. I think it's much more like 25% of the distance from Waterloo Bridge towards Blackfriars.
I correct myself. Basically, what you'll be doing is, rather than slicing the lady's face in two, you'll be putting a slice through the bottom third of her face.
So that's from a scenic point of view. But then there's also the question of, will there be a pedestrian flow that wants to make use of the bridge in the proposed location?
It's going to connect Coin Street, which is well connected on the south side because of both Blackfriars Bridge and Waterloo Bridge, with the north side, which is Temple Station, and the pedestrian flows are to the north, to the City, to the Fleet Street, to the Inns of Court from Temple Station.
That's right.
And to the LSE.
There is a heavy pedestrian flow on the south bank, but it's east-west. And then there's, an underground station is always a pedestrian origin, but the flow from it is to the north. There's no reason why the tourists on the south bank should want to cross to the north, and there's no reason why the lawyers and whoever else works on the north bank should want to come to the south.
I would contrast it with the Millennium Bridge, the Wobbler Bridge, which connects the Tate Modern with St Paul's Cathedral, with a direct connection, which was part of William Holford's scheme. That is well used. And also I'd compare it with the Millennium Bridge, because the Millennium Bridge is light. It's an airy structure and doesn't interrupt the views along the river nearly as much as the Garden Bridge will.
But just on the subject of pedestrian origins and destinations, the great difference for the Millennium Bridge is that there are two tourist destinations, one north and one south, and therefore a natural flow between them, which doesn't apply to the Garden Bridge. The next thing we ought to discuss is the aesthetics of the bridge design by Tom Heatherwick. What do you think of that?
I have to say I do find it rather contrived.
Why shouldn't a bridge be contrived?
Well, it's comparing a bridge with a tree, and yet it doesn't appear as a tree. It's very horizontal in terms of its layers, which form the arches, rather than rising from the pillars to the archways. And I rather wonder at the copper. Presumably the copper is going to be allowed to turn green, so you're going to have green on green, which might be quite strange.
The design elements that the bridge piers remind me of are there's artificial trees at the Getty Museum, and there's something a bit like it on the waterfront park in Singapore. If the bridge isn't intended as a connection between origin and a destination, what is its function?
That is a question, and that's a question that London, or rather currently now because it's judicial review, the judge ought to decide. Is it for aesthetic enjoyment? Well, it's a slash across the face of the City of London, as far as I'm concerned. Well, cyclists are not going to be able to cycle across. Large numbers of people are not going to be able to congregate there.
No, they say that no more than 2,500 will be allowed on the bridge at one time. I think it's a great pity that it's a single-purpose destination feature. The finest bridge described here beautifully by Arthur Upham Pope in his book on Persian art, is Kaju Bridge in Isfahan. From the steps on the lower side of the bridge, the people wash their linen or play in the cool water, and interior stairways lead thence up to the second story of the bridge. Poets in contemplation, mullahs and philosophers in argument, families in reunion, gossiping women, and friends at various amusements, all may enjoy the beauties of the scene in isolation and comfort. There were reception rooms built into the bridge, which you could hire for a wedding party. And I actually think that with the Garden Bridge, they've missed a trick, that it could easily have had two levels, like the Galata Bridge in Istanbul, with the lower deck for restaurants and weddings and receptions.
Fishing.
And fishing, yeah, in Galata, fishing as well. And the upper level as a connection between an origin and a destination, as well as being a destination in its own right.
Or other precedents could be, but we're talking about something which wouldn't be on this stretch of the river, but other precedents would be the old London Bridge with shops and chapels, or old Battersea Bridge, which was a high arched bridge of timber, the one that Whistler painted.
But Robert, if it's a bridge with, we think, so few functions, how come anybody's willing to fund it?
Well, even worse, how come we are going to be funding it as national taxpayers and also council taxpayers in London? It's going to be partially funded to the tune of £60 million, one reads, 1/3 of its costs by public funding. Why?
Well, I certainly don't object to spending money on something wonderful. I mean, there's the old story of, is it from Les Miserables, of a man who, his remaining possessions in the world were a loaf of bread, and his decision was to sell half of it and buy a book. You know, a spiritual good, like, you know, vast amounts of money that were spent on cathedrals. That's a good use of money, surely.
A public good is, of its nature, valuable for society, generally. Public parks in the 19th century. You've just quoted examples. However, we read that this bridge is going to be closed for up to 12 days a year, is it? And I would view that as for events, for private functions. Upstream is where this bridge should go, either above Vauxhall Bridge or possibly just aside of Vauxhall Bridge, which could connect areas of new development to north of the river to Victoria, between Victoria and Battersea and Vauxhall. That's where it should go. It's a male proposal with male... Sorry, but it is.
What about, you're not thinking Joanna Lumley as being male, are you?
With male designers, yeah, proposing typically, as designers and architects do, to cover up one of God's great creations, which is the River Thames. Yeah?
When you mention the reach of the river from Vauxhall to Chelsea Bridge, do you remember when we did a boat trip on the river? We tried to do a scenic quality assessment while enjoying the scenery.
And you produced a plan.
I did. And we thought that the King's Reach, which is where they're proposing to put the Garden Bridge, was high to very high.
As at present.
As at present. And so to put something else there is gilding the lily. Whereas the reach at Battersea, I think we put that as medium or below in terms of scenic quality. And so to put something wonderful there would be more appropriate.
There it would have an origin and destination, as we talked about it.
Robert, when I first heard the Garden Bridge mentioned on the radio, what I thought was that it was going to be built between Blackfriars railway station and Blackfriars Road Bridge, where there are some spare columns. And because I've been proposing that myself, just to friends, as a great place for a garden bridge for a long time. And so I then went to look up on the web to see what it looked like. And when I saw Arup's perspective of this dreamy, magical-looking place, it still took me a while to realise where they were proposing it. I thought it was at Blackfriars, and I had a look on the way here this afternoon, and I still think that that's a far better location for a garden bridge between the two Blackfriars bridges, because we're looking from Waterloo Bridge. It's really rather a hideous view of the chaotic city skyline with a lot of rubbish underneath it, which would be pleasantly screened by the greenery on the bridge, and it wouldn't interrupt the view of St Paul's. So what do you think about Blackfriars as a location for the garden bridge?
If you have to have it in the city, that will be connecting, as opposed to, say, Blackfriars Bridge, which is primarily
because
a
of
road
the
bridge.
enormous flow of pedestrians from the south,
From
north.
the Elephant and Castle and from Blackfriars and from London Bridge into the city. And therefore, if you have to have it in the city, if you have to have it near the King's Reach, don't have it in the King's Reach, but have it in the stretch of the river between the two bridges, between the current railway bridge and the road bridge, on the columns of the old London, Chatham and Dover Railway.
Is that what it is?
Yes.
What I'd like to see is a lower layer of restaurants looking down at the water and the ships underneath, and a higher level, perhaps with the deck close to that of Blackfriars, the new Blackfriars station, with the river views, which will be a great enchantment for a garden
there
bridge.
I think we differ, and I hope to persuade you otherwise by taking you up to Blackfriars Station, because you have good views, as you know, to the east, to Tower Bridge, from the station platforms at Blackfriars, and you also have good views to the west over King's Reach.
Let's go and have a look.
So we went to Blackfriars and had a drink. My thoughts were that the beer was excellent and that as a destination, the garden bridge could do well here. In its secondary role as a river crossing, it would provide useful extra capacity, especially for cyclists and pedestrians.